On December 3rd, 1994, the status quo of gaming was established. The Sony PlayStation set in stone many facets of gaming that still exist today, and in that 30-year journey, established an all-star lineup of characters that created endless fun for millions around the world. But it all had to begin somewhere. Before Ape Escape, Spyro, Crash, Parappa, and all the rest, there was Robbit. Stick around for the story of the PlayStation's first original character and the first great game of the 32-bit era. This is the story of Jumping Flash.
Let's go, Robbit! Jump and go! Jumping Flash!
December 3rd, 1994 is a clear demarcation line in the history of gaming. Life before and after PlayStation. It feels fait accompli in retrospect. The bold moves Sony made, from starting with a CD-ROM on day one, to having a blank slate that Nintendo and Sega didn't have, as well as a deep bankroll and creative freedom for developers, meant that it didn't take long for things to move in Sony's favor. Even from the very first year, several innovative and creative titles that sold well are still held in high regard today. One of the first unique titles, one that didn't rely on arcade conversions or an existing series, was Jumping Flash, a game that was very much ahead of its time, and in some ways could be considered the first true PlayStation game. One that allowed Sony to set the tone for what to expect on the PlayStation. 3D movement, bright, bold colors, CG animation, awesome music with voiceovers, and, unashamedly, Japanese, with that certain mixture of weird, cute, and funny that was rarely seen before. Jumping Flash had its origins in several media before the PlayStation itself met final approval. In the early 90s, Sony's PlayStation was originally envisioned as a CD-ROM add-on for Nintendo's Super Famicom. In June of 1991, Nintendo and Sony ended those plans when the Big N partnered instead with Sony's main rival, Philips. The Super Famicom never had a CD-ROM in the end, while Sony contemplated going it alone. In the time following their humiliation at the 91 CES, Sony appointed staff within different levels of the company to develop concepts that could demonstrate making a solo venture worthwhile. Jumping Flash helped tip the scales in favor of Sony entering the gaming business. In early 1993, Tetsuji Yamamoto developed a storyboard based on an animated short film, Jumping, directed by Osamu Tezuka. The animation in Jumping was seen through the eyes of a person moving over tall buildings, interacting with people and objects of a busy cityscape in a continual, free-falling motion. These designs were presented as a game concept he felt was both revolutionary and fully realizable. The concept was approved by Norio Oga, president of Sony. Internally, the PlayStation project was formalized, and the structuring of Sony Computer Entertainment, SCE, began. With the game now in the works, one with 3D elements, it was expected to follow others of that type, relying on science fiction, gearing the game towards young men. Yamamoto insisted on a different track, recruiting animation studio Ultra for his new game. Beginning in 1992, Ultra had been working as animators for the children's show Ugo Ugo Luga. The entire series featured actors appearing in computer-generated environments via a green screen. Though this was a children's show, the novelty of computer graphics attracted a large number of adults, primarily women. The most beloved character on Ugo Ugo Luga was Mikan Seijin, a Mandarin orange from another planet with semi-human facial features. The creator of Mikan Seijin, artist Kazuma Shirasaki, designed the very first character for the project, an alien named Moo. Bringing Ultra into the project ensured a unique take, one that could attract an audience beyond the usual young male demographic. While securing Ultra for the project, SCE showed Yamamoto's concept to several software developers. A small outfit from Niigata stepped up and took the opportunity. Exact, short for Excellent Application Create Team. A publisher with only 3 titles to their name by 1993, Exact also ran a software shop on the side to fund their works and distribute them. Those 3 games were for the Sharp X68000 computer. Though well made, these games were standard 2D action fare that were not very groundbreaking. But Exact had the perfect game waiting in the wings. Something that showed off top programming skills and a unique concept that utilized 3D environments. Geograph Seal. The game featured a soldier armed with a 2-legged mecha suit who invades the planet WS-090 with the mission to destroy tactical weapons that threaten the player's home world. The game features a first-person perspective, vast 3D terrain that requires jumping on multiple platforms to reach enemy targets, and a radar used for navigation. With complete 360-degree movement in-game, it was a very ambitious effort on hardware that was not even close to what the PlayStation was going to be. Geograph Seal surprised and impressed SCE. Exact signed on, and the project moved forward. Ultra designed characters and directed animation. Exact designed levels and programmed code. With this game, and others in motion, Sony made their intentions public with a formal announcement at the end of 1993. The PlayStation is coming. Get ready.
PlayStation。
Exact released Geograph Seal on March 12, 1994. The game garnered attention for its visual style, leaving X68000 users wondering how such a game was even possible. Geograph Seal was later named X68000 Game of the Year by OX magazine. Only a few days later, Sony took to the airwaves as part of a TV news special covering the next generation of gaming. Alongside other demos was a short clip of the Exact and Ultra project with the working title, Springman. It resembled Geograph Seal, only with much more detail. The special was the first public showing of what Sony had been working on. All other news beforehand were short press releases. With concrete concepts reaching consumers, interest in the PlayStation began to rise. A finished version of Springman and the PlayStation itself was still a ways off. As 1994 rolled on, what began with Geograph Seal evolved and became its own game. Several elements were carried over from the X68000 to the PlayStation. A free-roaming 3D environment fully designed with polygons. Jumping on platforms remained a vital gameplay mechanic. The character could shoot down enemies in the way. A health meter that could sustain long-term damage and be replenished remained. In Geograph Seal, it was simply known as a shield. An on-screen radar helped guide the player through each level, absolutely necessary at a time when not everyone had experience with 3D gaming. From here, the two concepts diverged. Springman de-emphasized the first-person shooting aspect. There were far fewer enemies, and you didn't have to interact with most of them. Rather than destroying enemy ships and structures, the goal of the game was collecting objects scattered across the map, moving the focus away from shooting and reducing the number of weapons required. Intense fighting was moved to a boss battle every few stages. The jumping and platforming aspect and the goal of collecting key items, combined with the 3D point of view, came together to create something that hadn't been commonly seen before in home gaming. The graphics had more colors, using brighter shades. The draw distance was far off into the horizon. Objects littered the screen. The PlayStation could draw every pixel on screen as a different color, load up massive stages quickly, and offer CD quality music. All a huge jump from what the X68000 could do. It all changed the tone of the game. Geograph Seal was dark, both in presentation and story. But Tetsuji Yamamoto stuck to his original vision, making a game that was more accessible to a wider audience. Muus, the first thing created for the game, became the bad guys. But to keep them from not being hated by the player, the Muus are simply under the control of an evil man, Baron Aloha, who, if real, would not come across as very threatening. In-game enemies are simple animals: frogs, penguins, weird flower things, dragonflies, and simple robots. Killing them was often optional. The main character was transformed from an unknown man in a mecha suit to a robot. A robot rabbit. Robbit. What's more, he works for the Universal City Hall, something far less fearful sounding than any military operation. The US and Japanese marketing teams at SCE sought to agree upon a name. The Japanese side wanted brash English words to give the game a shocking, exciting feel in advertising. The Americans wanted something that conveyed the unique 3D platforming gameplay. Going back and forth many times, one title was eventually agreed upon: Jumping Flash. In Japan, the subtitle, The Tale of Baron Aloha's Great Funky Mission, was added. For the American side, that was just too much. Jumping Flash made it to stores in Japan on April 28, 1995. In the UK and Europe on September 29, 1995. And November 1st, 1995 in the US. The first 3D action platformer with a character that gave Sony a game that could stand next to Mario and Sonic for a new era. It was time for Robbit to take off.
PlayStation.
Viperous Baron Aloha has cooked up a diabolical scheme. He is stealing our planet, piece by piece. The evil astrophysicist has excavated vast chunks of the Earth, enslaved the inhabitants, and shuttled the whole works off into space as his own galactic continents. Greedy Aloha has turned our serene world into Swiss cheese to make his own private resorts. Can anybody or anything stop him? Yes, one brave robot can do the job. Robbit, the perfect pest eradicator, is specially built to make bug juice out of Baron Aloha and his swarms of verminous helpers. Let's go, Robbit! Jump and go! To stop Baron Aloha, Robbit needs to return all the stolen worlds back to the crater planet. He can't do that without jet pods that have the power to move them. Baron Aloha has the hidden necessary jet pods and scattered them on each world. It's up to Robbit to collect these jet pods and return the world to its original state. Each lifted crater contains 3 stages. In the first 2, Robbit needs to collect jet pods. In the third, Robbit must battle one of Aloha's guardians. When all is cleared, Robbit can finally bring the world back to where it belongs. The jet pods look like carrots. Each of the 4 in every stage is labeled EXIT and shown on the radar. After collecting them, an escape pad must be reached to complete the mission. Robbit can move in 3 dimensions, and there are several ways to move around. Up and down on the directional pad move Robbit forward and backward. Left and right turn him in that direction. Pushing up with left or right makes Robbit turn and move diagonally. Pushing down with left or right makes Robbit quick turn. He jumps back and rotates. Robbit can also move his head to get a better view by pushing the directional buttons along with R1 or R2. The cross button makes Robbit jump, while mid-air, holding cross lets Robbit glide for extra distance. Square fires the Sparkle Beam gun, which has unlimited power. Circle launches a special item. These controls can also be adjusted to your liking. Robbit can jump twice in mid-air. Combined with the first jump off the ground, this gives a total of 3 jumps, which is necessary to reach certain areas. Robbit can also land on enemies instead of shooting them. With this unique setup, Robbit is able to move around large 3D stages with multiple levels, all without using any analog sticks. The game is presented from Robbit's point of view, seeing everything just as he does. Along with the field of view is a heads-up display. In the center is Kumagoro, Robbit's onboard lookout, who gives warnings, advice, and jokes. On the right side is the radar. The yellow dots are jet pods, white dots are enemies, red dots are power-ups. The blue V shape shows your current field of view. On the left side, the screen displays the special items Robert is holding. Cherry bombs, rockets, Roman candles, and twisters are found scattered throughout the map. These are useful against enemies and especially bosses. You can only hold 3 at a time. Picking up a 4th replaces one collected. The top left of the screen shows the timer. The top right shows the score. Extra lives are awarded at 300,000 points, 1 million points, and every million after that. Power-ups include 1-ups, time stoppers, HP recharges, and bursts of invincibility. Much like the other items, they can appear just about anywhere, so keep your eyes open. Jumping around and exploring the stages is fun on its own. Every now and then you might find bonus rings, which sends you to a special area filled with balloons. Pop them all before time runs out for an extra life. The game features 6 worlds: Nature in the Rough, Aloha's Egypt, Playland, Winterland on Ice, City Skirmish, and Sky Sports Park. Each one features its own challenges, with different terrains and platforms to scale. Roller coasters move you around. A few stages are underground, with maze exploration. The 3rd stage of each world is a boss battle, where one of Baron Aloha's poisonous, monstrous, or magical machines is waiting. World 6 features a double boss battle, with Robert facing off against Dark Robert before taking on Baron Aloha. After each stage is cleared, you can replay them in time attack mode, where you can challenge your best times and save them to your memory card. Complete the whole game, and you can replay all the stages with jet pods relocated and the difficulty turned up. Can Baron Aloha be stopped? Robert's got the attitude, if you can stand the altitude. Upon release in 1995, the gaming media had many kind words for Jumping Flash and offered multiple reviews of the game. Famitsu Magazine reviewed the game in May 1995 with a score of 34 out of 40. The cross-review team said Jumping Flash is a fresh and exciting experience that only a new machine can provide. The gameplay has realistic depth with dreamy characters, and that while all you do is collect items, it's still very fun. Each reviewer on the crew also remarked about the sensation of falling, even warning about motion sickness. In Japan, sales were pretty good, considering the smaller user base the PlayStation had in the first 6 months, slightly under 1 million. Considering the competition Jumping Flash was up against, a plethora of Super Famicom games, and the Sega Saturn, Jumping Flash sold well, entering the Famitsu sales charts at number 5. The sales numbers for this chart only represent a small cross-section of stores across Japan, and not total sales numbers, which were never publicly released. Jumping Flash hung around in the top 10 for several weeks and fell out of the top 30 by the end of summer, which by then, the PlayStation had surpassed the 1 million mark. Next Generation gave a perfect score in August 1995. The review was very introspective, thinking about the future of the PlayStation and gaming as much as the here and now. In these early PlayStation games, we will no doubt get a good idea for the heights the machine will stretch, the article read. Many of the boundaries have been redefined in a big way with this game. Jumping Flash is the kind of game that will legitimize a new console in a hurry. Electronic Gaming Monthly awarded Jumping Flash Game of the Month in November 1995, with a score of 34.5 out of 40. The review crew said Jumping Flash is just like Mario and Sonic if they were shown from a first-person perspective, and shows off what the PlayStation can do, that it's very rare to play something totally unique. Jumping Flash fits right into this category by offering the player 3D graphics with a totally new twist, height, and that it's one of the weirdest games seen in a long time, and that's a good thing. The review ends by recognizing that Jumping Flash beautifully executes what Nintendo hoped to do with Star Fox way back in '93. Die Hard Game Fan gave an average score of 93% in October 1995. The Viewpoint crew said, Jumping Flash will go down in history as one of the most monumentally innovative games of all time. The perfect hybrid of platform action and 3D immersion, and the best use of a 3D environment in any game ever. The review closes simply with, "And a genre is born."
なんだか暗いムー。とっても寒いムー。
女の子だったの。
飛んで助けろムームー星人。
助けてムームー、助けてムームー。
元祖飛び芸ジャンピングフラッシュ2。
助けたっす。
プレイステーション。
Robert returned in 1996 with a sequel, Jumping Flash 2, Big Trouble in Little Moo. This time, Baron Aloha is the one who calls for help. Retiring to planet Little Moo after the first game, he and the Moo Moos are now under assault by Captain Kabuki, who tears the planet apart. Arriving only a year after the original, the sequel is not much different from the first game. The heads-up display has a jump meter. A few new power-ups were added. Graphics were improved with longer draw distances. The goal of collecting 4 items per stage, this time Moo Moos, remains the same, as does the third stage boss battles. Reviews of the game were positive, though criticized the lack of innovation. It wasn't that Jumping Flash 2 was a bad game, but following something so innovative with something that doesn't move the needle very much hurt the series. Times were changing rapidly. By the end of 1996, 16-bit era games were finished. 32-bit was no longer next generation. New games were almost exclusively 3D. Crash Bandicoot had captured the spotlight with hilarious attack ads that took it right to Mario. Sega had Nights into Dreams that hammered Sony. Nintendo now had their own 3D Mario game that had reviewers using the same words to describe the experience that were used for Jumping Flash just a year ago. Beyond these 3, a deluge of games, some good, some mediocre, and several downright bad, flooded the scene. Most action and platforming games adopted a third-person point of view. First person would be seen more in shooters, the genre Jumping Flash wanted to distance itself from. Sony redesigned the PlayStation controller, with analog inputs and force feedback, making 3D games more immersive and easier to control. Times had changed so fast, Jumping Flash was suddenly a relic of the genre it created and ruled for a short time. The series continued on in Japan with 2 more games in 1999. The first, Pocket Moo Moo, used the short-lived Pocket Station device, a memory card with a tiny LCD screen. As Jumping Flash was one of the first PlayStation games, having the Moo Moos come back for one of the first Pocket Station games just felt right. Pocket Moo Moo is a collection of minigames that operate on the Pocket Station screen or on the TV. The Pocket Station itself is not required. Playing these games earns Moo, in-game money that is then spent to build your own customized amusement park. Robert is still the playable character, but other than bouncing around your newly created park, there's not much here to call it a Jumping Flash game. The second arrived at the end of 1999, Robot Monja, as close to Jumping Flash 3 as there would ever be. It doesn't earn that number 3 because a few things are very different from the original 2 games. Robot Monja takes place over 300 years after the fight against Baron Aloha. Universal City Hall still maintains the civil society. When the citizens of Hanuuma need help, a newer model of Robot is called up to remedy the situation. The format of Robot Monja has changed from large open worlds with one uniform goal to a series of short missions with differing goals. Some are rather strange, like using giant frying pans and volcanoes to cook eggs, or blasting rodent pests that have invaded carrot gardens. Nearly all of these stages feature short time limits or numbered objectives. Robot Monja plays more like a series of quick time events that would be part of a larger game, and it feels like that main quest portion was left on the cutting room floor. The physics and mechanics mostly do not change. Robot still has his jumping power and can now pound the ground with the triangle button. Special items are reduced to only 1 per stage, forcing the player to be more strategic with your only chance. For those who lament the change of direction, one upside is that Robot Monja has much more story development, interaction with peripheral characters, and animated intermissions that make everything feel less abstract than the original outings. Events of the older games with this new one are tied together, as the Yellow Robot is the successor of the original older hero. Despite the changes made in Robot Monja and the attempt to keep the series relevant against a saturated marketplace, Jumping Flash was finished. With hundreds of great PlayStation games for 5 straight years, and the incoming PlayStation 2, it's only natural that older games would be replaced by ones that are bigger, have more polish, embrace different ideas, and are very simply newer. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention one minor addition to the Jumping Flash family. Rap La Mumu, a PlayStation disc that isn't really a game, but a music video to the ending song of Jumping Flash 2 that features a mix of old and new animation. In the PlayStation 3 era, Jumping Flash was featured as part of the PS1 Classic series of downloadable games. Eventually, all 4 games in the series were downloadable and playable on the PlayStation 3, PSP, and Vita in Japan, while elsewhere, Jumping Flash 1 and 2 were sold. However, with a secondary account registered to Japan, anyone could easily access the games. Today, the first Jumping Flash is available on the PlayStation 4 and 5 with trophy support. Over a decade after Jumping Flash, reviews of these re-released games started to appear. With some time and distance from the original release, contemporary scores are mostly positive, though often not as high as they were in 1995. The groundbreaking nature of the game is still remembered fondly, though the length of the game is often criticized, while it is also remarked upon that modern games have moved beyond what Jumping Flash was. While there hasn't been a game starring Robert in over 25 years, the little guy has made some cameo appearances, if you know where to find him. And while Robert might be just a fond, though faded memory these days, Jumping Flash will never be forgotten. The game was enshrined in the 2008 Guinness Book of World Records Gaming Edition as the first true 3D game ever made. Not bad, Robert. Not bad at all.
Come on.
PlayStation.
It's not hard to call Jumping Flash the first great game of the 32-bit era. That title will always be up for debate, but I think it fits. Sure, we had some great, groundbreaking games before then. Virtua Fighter, Ridge Racer, Doom, even Tempest 2000. But there are a few things that break the mold with Jumping Flash. Of course, the free-roaming worlds in true 3D, where you can move in any direction. That's been talked about a lot already. But more to it, Jumping Flash really feels like the first step off the bridge from 16-bit to 32. Famously, the PlayStation was to be a CD-ROM drive for the Super Famicom that never came to pass. For many of us on the ground in those days, watching the PlayStation go on its own felt almost like watching an alternate timeline unfold. Turning on that old PS1 back in 1995, hearing that Sony startup sound, and then get hit with everything Jumping Flash had to offer really made me feel like Nintendo was going down the wrong road. We all know how the rest of the 90s played out, and it's all ancient history these days. But after games like Pilot Wings, Star Fox, and Stunt FX, the next logical step would have to be something like Jumping Flash. Not only the 3D polygon world, but that certain level of bright cheeriness that many Nintendo games had. It almost feels like Jumping Flash was the next big Mode 7 game. Instead, Robert was part of Sony's fresh start. While Ridge Racer is synonymous with day one PlayStation today, it was an arcade conversion. The marvel around it was playing a high-end arcade game on the TV, not breaking new ground in what could only be done at home. The rest of the early PS1 games were mostly brought in from elsewhere, or were not very spectacular. It was Jumping Flash that was the first wholly original creation, from top to bottom, designed for the home, and done so in a way that really made people stop and notice. And it was the game that Sony used to say to the world, "This is the direction we're going, so get on the train." It's why the status quo of gaming begins with the original PlayStation. The next step off that bridge to 32-bit, and the next, all built on what Jumping Flash had established. Super Mario 64 gets all the credit, but it, and everyone else, had Jumping Flash as a model for where to start, which is why it still stands as the first great 32-bit game ever made.
¿Qué?